Hello and welcome. Today we are going over my October wrap up. I have changed my style up a little bit after watching a couple of other videos from other people who do their wrap ups. I wanted mine to be just a bit more cohesive. I didn't want to ramble on so much, so we're going to be trying out a new system. So let's go ahead and let's jump right on into this. So for the month of October, I read over 16 books. 5 of those were fantasy, 4 were horror, 1 was a literary fiction, 2 mysteries, and 4 romances. And this equated to roughly around 3,000 pages because there were some DNFs. So now let's quickly run through the stars, ratings that I have given to books, and then I'm not going to go into depth about all the books I've read, just pretty much the ones that either really disappointed me or really impressed me. So first we have Artificial Light by Shannon McGuire. This was a 4.5 star rating. Then we had Carmilla by Sheridan Lee Fanu. This was a 4-star rating. Both Air of Sea and Fire and Harpist in the Wind by Patricia A. McKillop were 5 stars. Lanny by Max Porter was also 5 stars. Late Eclipse, which I read the ebook version of, was 5 stars. If I could give it 10, I would. Then we have the Cavendish Home for Boys and Girls. This was a 4-star. And then the rest of these were all ebooks or audiobooks. And that would be Dark Harvest by Norman Partridge, which was 4 stars. The Pig in the Derby Hat by M.A. Knights was 3 stars. Dust Buffaloes by A.L. Steelhead. This was 5 stars. The Locked Coffin by Lavi Tidar. It's a short story on Tor.com. 4 stars. Alien Owner. I'm blanking on the author. Sorry. This was a DNF. Educated by the Alien. Also a DNF. Thorn. I believe this is by Skye McCannon. This was a 3.5. Dark Christmas by Lemba. It's Lemba something. This was a 1.5. And then Surviving Scar by Ruby Dixon was a 1.5. So now we're going to get into some of the books I want to discuss. And I'm going to start with my disappointments, and then I will lead up into my favorites. So starting with disappointments, the first one I want to talk about is Dark Christmas. This was a horror short story compilation that I picked up on Halloween Day because they had a Stuff Your Kindle Day on Halloween Day for horror authors and such. This was one of the ones that was given out for free, and it's about 60 pages long. And one of the things that you hear a lot when it comes to people talking about self-published books is editing. And a lot of self-published authors do get very defensive when reviewers say, hey, you need an editor for your book. And there's a really big reason for this. This book suffered because of the lack of editing. It was riddled with spelling mistakes, grammatical mistakes, there was double words, there was the wrong word usage being used, run-on sentences. Just every problem that you could think of was present. And it wasn't like here was a little bit, here was a little bit. It was like every other page, sometimes multiple within one page. And it ruins the reading experience because as the reader, you get yanked out because you're like, that's what? So an example of one of the words being wrong was Yule log, Y-U-L-E-L-O-G. For whatever reason, the author spelt it Y-O-U space L-O-G. What? So it was things like that where had an editor looked over it, they would have been like, hey, wrong word. You misspelled this word. This is actually supposed to be this word. And then, like I said, a lot of repeating words, double words. And then when you partner on top of the fact that the stories themselves weren't good, they were little quick bites. And I think if you're familiar with Hans Christian Andersen or Poe or even Grimm Brothers, you know what a short clip of a story feels like. And they always manage to make theirs feel satisfying. This one, unfortunately, they attempted to do the same thing and none of the stories were satisfying. And then they tried to throw in that horror shock factor on top of it, which didn't hit because you were not invested because there were multiple things removing you from the story. So it ended up being like a really big disappointment. I didn't have like high hopes for it, but I was at least hoping to come out of it with like a like an in the middle kind of thing, but I was very disappointed, mainly because of the lack of care and editing that went into it. After that, Alien Owner. This was one of my DNFs. This was DNF'd because I have come to realize in my exploration of romance is there are romance books that are written purely for the smut factor, and then there are romance books written for the story, the character building, and the smut. The Alien Owner was written purely for the smut. I did not like it at all. I do not want my love characters, the love interest, to be having sex within the first chapter of meeting one another. That just doesn't seem romantic to me in the slightest bit. Also, a big scene happens without consent. The male author does a particular act to the girl without her consent, and during the scene she is telling him to stop, and he tells her no because he controls her and all that other stuff. And then during the middle of this scene, they confess that they love each other. And that was where I drew the line. I was like, I'm not going to read anymore. No, these characters have known each other for literally a week, and there's no consent going on. Just, no, they don't love each other. This is bull. So that was where I ended that journey with that one. It was just the lack of actual care that went into actually telling a good story and writing a good romance between two characters. It was literally just written for the smut, and that's not my jam. The next one that I had DNF was Educated by the Alien. This book honestly just made no sense. It made zero sense. It felt like 3 books smashed together, on top of feeling like those 3 books they smashed together were maybe like opening scenes for those books. I had no idea where this was going. It was confusing. The lore itself didn't really make sense. Something about the girl, she lives in space on some kind of space station thing where all the girls are trained to be prostitutes for male aliens, but they're also being sexually abused by the guards that work there, and she's trying to make like a special little family of girls, and she's like a high-end prostitute. It was weird. I wasn't jamming with it. The aliens, they were like half man, half horse, and not in like the centaur way, but like they were fully man, but then they had hooves with thumbs, I was like, I'm sorry, am I the only one picturing that in a really weird, like I'm picturing literally a horse hoof with like these little like thumbs sticking out of it, and that's creepy. And then they were furry all over, like downstairs furry. I was like, nope. And so you put all those things together, and I was just like, no, no to all of this. Like I said, ended up just like DNFing it because I did not know what was going on. I was like, this is so bad. And then the last disappointment that I want to talk about, which is actually a huge disappointment for me, would be Surviving Scar by Ruby Dixon. This is the second book in the Ice Clones Planet spinoff from the Ice Planet Barbarians series. So at the beginning of the year, I read through Ice Planet Barbarians, Ice Home, like all of that in like 3 months. It became everything of who I am. I love the original Ice Planet Barbarians series. So, and then I had, with Ice Home, there was some I didn't like, but for the most part, I really did enjoy it. So I was obviously very looking forward to this. I was looking forward to going back to Not Hoth. Yes, that's a Star Wars reference. They're all over these books. I was so disappointed, you guys. I was so disappointed. To start out, both main characters you follow, the male and female love interest, they are not interesting. They're not interesting. Scar is, he is the cocky type. Like, he's cocky, but he's the type where he annoys you. And you're like, if you don't stop talking, we're gonna have a problem. Like, we're gonna have a serious problem if you don't stop talking. That was my big problem with him, which makes him vastly different from Ashtar, who appears in Ice Home. He's cocky, but he's the cocky where you're like, you can keep talking, sir. You're kind of adorable. Very different types of cocky. Whereas Viv, or Vivi, or Vivian, because she goes by like 100 names in this book, she's just bland, but she also like purposely excludes herself from everyone because she's like, I'm so shy, I just don't know how to be around other people, oh my gosh. And so like she purposely removes herself from everybody, and you're just kind of like, okay, like she puts zero effort into making herself a part of the group, but then tries to be like, oh, but it's not my fault, like it's not my fault. It is your fault because you're purposely it's one thing to be shy, it's one thing to have insecurities, it's another to just purposely remove yourself and then act like everybody else is the problem, which was something that she did throughout the entire book. And then plot wise, the story just was boring because Ruby decided to focus on having these characters try and figure out who they are as a person, because they are both clones in space, and Ruby's thing was, oh, they got to figure out who they are, what their personalities are, because like they have like these little random memories from the person they were cloned from or whatever, and it was boring. The thing that I would have preferred to have seen and what I was hoping the book would be around was Scar and his struggle to survive on an ice planet, because Scar is a lizard-based alien, so he cannot thermal regulate himself the same way everybody else can, and that is with him having the parasitic qui that allows them to live on this planet. We got like one scene that dealt with him having problems, and that was it, and it was the most entertaining part because it really put the stakes up for letting you realize this is going to be a struggle for this character, even though he has the same parasitic qui that everybody else has. And it would have just been so much more interesting to see him struggle with his mate trying to help him figure out how to help him survive on this planet. I think that would have been a much stronger storyline, and it would have been more interesting, and it's what I had been hoping his story would be around, because up to this point, it was just the humans who aren't exactly built for cold weather, but like we know how to work it and handle it. He's literally not built for cold weather. It will kill him. And yet we got, I need to figure out who I am. And that was boring, bro. It was boring. There was also some inconsistencies within the scenes, which was really frustrating because it's not often you come across that in Ruby's books because they seem to be very well edited. Not this one. Not this one. I was like, that scene literally makes no sense. You took her boots off 2 pages beforehand. Why are her boots back on? What is happening? So yeah, the sexy time scenes really weren't that fantastic either. I actually skipped over an entire paragraph because I was like, I'm going to throw up in my mouth. Thank you very much. That's not sexy. So yeah, very, very disappointing. Ugh, so sad. And I won't get another one until like next year. So I'm really gonna hope the next one will be better. So now I'm gonna go into the 2 books that surprised me most. And the first one being Lanny by Max Porter. This is the one that's considered literary fiction, and I grabbed it randomly at the library. Basically, you follow this town, and in this town there is this omniscient presence called Papa Deadtoothwort, which is basically the Green Man. So if you are familiar with the legend of the Green Man, you will get those vibes and those connections and such. But basically it's a very modern set world. He goes around listening to people who live in this little village above where his forest used to be, essentially. And there is a particular little boy that he has taken a keen interest in, because this little boy he's weird, he's different, he's a bit of an oddball, he's strange. Everybody in the town is just kind of like, that kid's not really there. And he's just a kid who like really kind of embraces everything and anything in life. He's a little off course from everybody, and that's fine. And he ends up going missing. What's the most intriguing part for me about this, because I read this in a day and I just could not put it down, was once the mystery aspect comes up and the town is being investigated, the writing style takes this really interesting twist, and it's told to you in gossip. And it's so intriguing. Like, the whole time I'm reading this, like, I felt like I was that nosy neighbor sitting on the outside, just like, gotta clean my blinds. oh, I gotta do some sweeping, like, and you're listening to people, because that's how it's told. And a lot of people in some of the other reviews that I read, they were like, it's confusing, I can't really follow the story. And I loved it. I loved not knowing who was saying what, because like it felt so authentic. Because when you get to that point of gossip being your only view into any information being shared through an event that's happening, you don't care where it's coming from. You don't care who said what. You don't care how it got started. You're just there for the gossip. And it was just such an intriguing way to tell the story, and it kept me glued to the book. Like I could not, like, my daughter interrupted me and I was like, "What do you want?" And she's like, "Dinner?" And I was like, "Oh, fine, we're gonna make dinner." You know, like, I was just like, I want to be a part of this gossip. It's so good. So I definitely recommend this, because it's such a strange little thing. And like, I feel like it fits up there into that category of like where Paranesi is, where people are just like, we don't really know how to talk about it, but like, it's just kind of weird and so good and just kind of like sucks you in. This one, loved, so good. And I'm so glad I just like randomly picked it up at the library, just like searching around for stuff. Like, I'm so glad I just listened to my gut on that one. The next surprise was Dark Harvest by Norman Partridge. This is a surprise to me because I don't really do a lot of horror in general. I'm very picky about what horror I pick up. But this, it's a novella, and the audiobook is like 4 hours long. So I was listening to the audiobook, and I was doing it while I was doing like a massive clean of my house. So I listened to it in one day. And the whole time I was just like, no, oh my God, shut up, you're lying, no, oh my God. Like, verbally out loud. Like, I was the only one in my home, but like my windows and such were open, and I'm pretty sure my neighbors like heard me inside just being like, oh my God, no, they just died. Like, I was so involved with this book, it was insane. But when you like learn the lore of this town, because it all takes place around this town and this tradition that they have every October, and when you learn what that tradition is, and then when you learn the roots of that tradition, you're like, I'm sorry, what? I was legitimately mad at this town. I have never been so angry with a town and a celebration that they do yearly. I have never been so mad. It kept me on edge. It kept me entertained. I was just like, I have to know what happens next. I have to know what happens next. What happens next? And the thing that I really loved was that all the point of views that it focused on, none of them were really like closely related to one another. Like, it wasn't like a sibling here and like siblings there. Like, it was these different characters that were all connected because of this central event that was happening in this town. And I think it was done just so well. And I ate it up. Like, I could not stop. And I remember the few times that I did stop, it was because I had to tell my friend about it. And I was like, this is what happened. This is what's happening now. This is why it happened. And she was like, that is a weird little book. And I was like, girl, you have no idea. Now, I did realize when I looked at reviews for this on Goodreads, it's like an average rating of like 3 something. And I honestly think the reason why I enjoyed it so much is because I am not immersed in the world of horror books. And so some of the reviews I was looking at, their main genre is horror. And so they were like, it was predictable. I could see what was going to happen. You know, it wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. The jump scares didn't really get me. They got me. They got me. Okay. So I do think that if like you're a big horror reader, you're probably not going to enjoy it as much as I did. If horror isn't something that you read a ton of, you'll probably end up enjoying it as much as I did, because that was like that was a big thing for me. Like, it was great stuff. I enjoyed it very, very much. So now moving on to my favorites. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There were 6 of them that were my favorites. So first up will be The Artificial Night and Late Eclipses. Yeah, Late Eclipses. These are books 3 and 4 of the October Day series by Shannon McGuire. It's urban fantasy. I was introduced to this series because Daw Books sent me the ARCs for books 17 and 18. And I cannot be more grateful for them because I love this series so much, you guys. I love it so much. But Artificial Night got a 4.5. It was good. It was entertaining. There was a couple of things that, you know, I didn't really like mesh with or whatever. But overall, I did enjoy the plot and the storyline because you follow October taking on Blind Michael, who has been stealing children of both Fae and human heritage. And the things he does to these children is horrific. Horrific. Okay. Her journey into getting them back, it had a couple of moments where I was like, this is kind of funny. We got to meet more characters of Tybalt's kingdom, and if you guys have been seeing me talk about this series, I am in love with Tybalt. So meeting more people of his kingdom, yes please. We also got to see some reoccurring characters from the past come back. So yes, loved it. In Late Eclipses though, everything changes. It's a game changer, you guys. If you're reading this series for the first time and books 1 through 3 really aren't hitting it for you, read book 4. Because so much changes in it. We lose vital characters from the storyline. Certain characters, their entire history arc changes. Like, I have more questions now than I ever did in the beginning. The things I thought I knew, I no longer know. They are out the window. It's done. It's over. Like, so many people that are important to Toby were put at risk in Late Eclipses, and I was just like, no. And there's a major death, and I was like, I wasn't ready for that one. I was not ready for that. Why did you do that? I disagree. Like, I'm actually really mad about it because it's one of those deaths that could have been prevented. And that makes it hit even more because when you find out it could have been prevented, you're like, son of a biscuit. Are you kidding me? And it rips you even more. And you're just like, and I love that because, as you guys know, I love when my books rip my heart out and leave me a crying mess on the floor. Late Eclipses had me crying through basically the entire thing. So, yes, I'm continuing on with that series. Nothing is stopping me from reading it. I have to get them through the library right now because I cannot afford to buy them, but I will be owning this series because I am so in love with it, and I definitely recommend it. Just give yourself to book 4. If during book 4 you're not being hit by any kind of emotions, drop the series. It's not going to do anything for you. And also, I think going up to book 4 is a lot better than, 7, 8, or 9 or something like some of these other series people talk about, because most of the time we read a trilogy and each of these books are like 350 pages. You can get through them in like 2 days. So at least give yourself to book 4. After that, we have The Heir of Sea and Fire and Harpist in the Wind by Patricia A. McKillop. Both of these were 5 stars for me. These are books 2 and 3 of the Quest for the Riddle Master trilogy. And I really love the way that she kind of like planned out this book series. The first book, you follow Morgan. The second book, you follow Ray Durley, the girl that he is engaged to. And the third book, everybody comes back in. And what's really cool about this one is with Ray Durley, we get to see her go from being a princess who isn't really allowed to have much say in her life to being like, I'm taking control of my life because I'm getting sick and tired of all of these men knocking on my door being like, you want to marry me? You want to marry me? You want to marry me? And she's like, no, I want to marry Morgan, and I want to know what happened to Morgan. Where is he? He's been missing. And she goes out on her little journey to find out what happens, and she like gets to meet all the same people Morgan met and gets to learn more about Morgan on her journey. And one of the things I really appreciated in her book was the friendship that she creates with another female character who knows Morgan. And the thing that I really love that Patricia did was there wasn't a competition between these two girls over who loved Morgan more, because the love that these women had for Morgan were 2 different types of love. And seeing a friendship like blossom out between the 2 of them was so nice, and I really loved it, because too often those love triangles pop up and you get like girls fighting over men and all the other nonsense, and just not my thing. So I love the fact that like these 2 women could realize they both cared for Morgan but differently, and it didn't cause them rift to try and work with one another. There was also a lot of magic that came forth that Ray Durley was learning about herself as well as her past and her history, which was so nice. And then when you get to Harpist in the Wind, so much more gets revealed. Like, when you find out Morgan's connection to everything, you're like, oh my gosh. And it actually has a bunch of parts that were actually like very heartbreaking. just to see people who you thought cared about you put you in a position where you're like, you never actually cared about me, did you? Only to find out something completely different. So, and I think it wrapped up the overall story really, really well. And it stayed entertaining all the way through, because at this point, it's the need to get to that final event. And there's like this rush to kind of get there. And seeing Morgan and Ray Durley work together was very interesting, because their relationship felt very authentic. A lot of times in a lot of newer books, when you have like a couple inside of them, it feels very rushed and it feels like they're instantly able to work with one another. There was a lot of struggle with these two, and I really appreciated that, because it made it just feel more realistic and authentic. Overall though, what you learn is just, it's twisty, and you're like, okay. Okay. So I very much recommend Patricia, especially if you like that very whimsical, fantastical feeling, and you like the character building a lot. She does have like a very pretty, I think it's called purple prose, where it's just like very pretty, and just like, I don't really know how to explain it. Like, it's pretty and lyrical. I think that's the other word a lot of people use. But I definitely love Patricia's writing, and I think she's definitely worth looking into. The next surprise was The Cavendish Home for Boys and Girls by Claire Legrand. This is a middle grade book. This has Coraline vibes. Like, I feel like that's all you guys need to know. Because if you loved Coraline, you will enjoy this. You will not love it as much as you love Coraline, because let's face it, it's Coraline. But this is going to give you those vibes. Like, if you're wanting another story that makes you feel like how Coraline feels, and it has those elements that Coraline has, Cavendish Home for Boys and Girls will give you that, because you follow, there's this other presence that is very similar to Other Mother. Their goals are different, but the minute you meet this character, you're like, that's Other Mother vibes. Just straight Other Mother vibes. And the world that this character is involved in is definitely Otherworld vibes. And you're just like... So I definitely really, really loved that about this. I will say the thing is, though, I didn't really care for the main character's personality, because it's a personality trope that I personally don't care for. But it worked perfectly for this book and connecting the main character back to the antagonist of the story. It was just so perfectly planned that I can appreciate what the author did with it. I just personally didn't care for it. So she's not like a favorite character of mine when it comes to middle grade books, but I appreciate her and her role that she took in this book. And then the last one that I am going to talk about is Dust Buffaloes, a Not Dust Bunny Tale by A.L. Steelhead. This is a self-published middle grade book, and the author actually reached out to me a couple months ago asking if I would review it, and I was like, yeah, of course. And so so obviously, because I'm a very big mood reader, I didn't get to it like super quickly, but I did read it last month. And I'm kind of kicking myself for not reading it sooner, because this book is fantastic. I loved this book so freaking much. It was adorable. It was entertaining. It was fast-paced. Like, everything that you could like want in a story, you were just like, oh my, this is great. This is fantastic. And the little buffaloes that you follow, they're adorable. They're little, like, everybody knows what a dust bunny is. These are dust buffaloes. So same idea, just buffaloes instead of bunnies. And it's really cute because like they live in this little farmstead house thing, and it's a little old lady who lives there, and she has decided to take on this viewpoint of the world of everything has a place, everything has a purpose, I will not disturb it. So from an outside perspective's point of view, they would probably look at this woman's house and go, you're a hoarder. You're a hoarder. But she's like, no. Nope, those magazines, they have home right there. That's where they belong. That pile of boxes, yep, that's where they belong. Like, that's her mindset. And it has allowed for this ecosystem to be created of dust buffaloes that live within her home. And everything changes when she has to leave for hip surgery. And her grandson comes and lives there, and he is a clean freak. So we can already tell where that storyline is heading. The thing that was very interesting about the antagonist, the grandson, he was insanely manic. He already, like, when he gets introduced, he already, like, starts out very crazy, but, like, as the story progresses, he gets unhinged manic, and I was just like, this is the greatest thing to follow along. And it's not really an element that you see appear in a lot of middle grade books. Like, you get, like, your crazy antagonists and, you know, your scary monsters and stuff, but to actually see, like, the psychiatric, like, downfall of somebody because their own issues start to overwhelm and take over their life, you don't really see that. So to see that in this book, I was like, this is insane. Like, this man is just straight crazy. He needs a therapist bad. It was wild. And then when you take into account that you have a human up against little dust buffaloes, you're like, how is this actually going to work? How is this going to play out? And I was pleasantly surprised how the author, like, handled it, and also majorly surprised with how the end of the book, like, came into play. Like, I don't want to give too much away because, like, it's very, there's a certain element where once it popped up, I was not expecting it to pop up because I was, like, thinking that these are just, like, two separate worlds. But the way that the author decided to, like, mesh them together and actually, like, make them aware of each other was kind of, like, mind-blowing to me. And I was like, this is crazy and so fun. Like, I'm here for it and I love it. I loved seeing the main buffalo go from being, like, insecure about himself because everybody treats him differently because his core is made differently from all the other dust buffaloes, and not being seen seriously by his father, who is a very important dust buffalo within the society. To see him go from having all those insecurities and those fears to being, like, accepted within his community and people looking to him for help and advice was so satisfying. And I think the author handled it so well because it wasn't just, like, an instantaneous, like, turnaround. There was a struggle for the turnaround, and you see it start to change, and then it starts to fall back, and then it starts to change again. And I just really loved that it wasn't straight linear and just, it's fixed now. There was an ongoing struggle. So definitely fabulous. It is a hidden gem. I'm not lying when I say that because I am the only person who has reviewed this on Goodreads. The only person. This is a hidden gem. So if you have children or if you yourself love middle grade books, I highly recommend this one because it is just fantastic. It is so fun. You're gonna enjoy it. You're gonna stay engaged the whole way through. I read it in one day because I was sucked into the story, and you're not gonna be disappointed. So definitely give it a try. That is everything. I'm hoping that this style maybe works a little bit better. I'm hoping that the videos aren't going to be as long as what they used to be. But yeah, if you've read any of these, if you have anything that you want to say, comment down below, like, subscribe, all of those great things, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye!